In today's episode of the PR Maven podcast, you will hear from Fabiana Melendez, Senior Publicist at Zilker Media. Fabiana Melendez is a communications expert and strategic storyteller currently serving as the Senior Publicist for Zilker Media, an Austin, Texas-based agency building people-driven brands. Fabiana uses her industry expertise and passion for developing in-depth communication strategies to generate brand awareness for brands and their leaders. Since joining the Zilker Media family, Fabiana has counseled her clients on the ins and outs of a changing media landscape to break through the noise of a saturated market and achieve their personal brand goals. She has landed top-tier hits for clients in Business Insider, Fast Company, USA Today, U.S. News and World Report, and more. Fabiana enjoys sharing her expertise in communication strategies, public relations brand awareness, and her thoughts on navigating the workforce with business and lifestyle media. She has provided tips for navigating the workforce to fellow millennials and Gen Z, shared insights on viral influencer campaigns and marketing trends in the hospitality and legal industries. She has been featured in Fast Company, Reader's Digest, Refinery 29, ABA Journal, Fairy God Boss, Authority Magazine, and Modern Restaurant Management, among others. Welcome to the PR Maven podcast, a podcast all about growing your network and building your brand through traditional and digital networking techniques. I'm Nancy Marshall, the PR Maven and CEO of Marshall Communications. I've been strengthening brands through PR for over 35 years, and now I'm celebrating the success of executives, influencers, business owners, and entrepreneurs from all around the world, all of whom have cultivated their brands and broadened their networks through traditional and digital networking methods. Each week, I interview one of these interesting and influential individuals and provide an opportunity for you, the PR Maven Nation, to gain insights from their strategies and stories. So stay tuned for this week's episode, and thanks for listening. So Fabiana, tell us about your PR career and how you got into it in the first place.
Right. So PR for me was this very serendipitous accident. I originally went to college to be a forensic medical examiner. So my goal was to work in forensics and all of that fun true crime stuff. And then I quickly realized while I was pursuing that career that the hard sciences were maybe not my strong suit. And I realized that after I looked at my degree plan and it said, I have to take advanced physics 3 and 5. And I was like, well, where's regular physics 1? At what point would I be taking all of this? So it was my sort of come to Jesus moment, because I really wanted to do it, but I also knew it was going to be kind of impossible if I didn't really enjoy the science aspect of it. So I met with my college advisor at the time, and I kind of brought this bulleted list of all the things I wanted in a major, in a career. And she goes, well, you're very well spoken, you know what you want, and you're also very good at getting people to understand things and stories. Have you thought about PR? At the time, I didn't know much about PR. So to me, it was this sort of new thing. And I looked at her and I said, Samantha from Sex and the City, because she's a publicist, right? And she goes, yes, but this is an actual career, right? You're not just going to be a party girl planning events.
That's probably why I wanted to do PR in the first place.
Right. And you see PR in the media and you're either this super sort of boss lady who is the press secretary for a president or a head of state, or you're Samantha Jones and you're traipsing around the city planning events. Everybody knows you, everybody loves you, right? And I was like, you know what, let's do it. So I took the classes and it felt very natural. And I started interning in positions that really allowed me to get a broader scope of what PR was. So I did positions in nonprofit and tech and event planning. And then I realized I loved it. Like it felt very natural to my personality and to who I am as a person. So that's kind of how I ended up into it. It was not linear, but I am thankful that it wasn't.
Well, it sounds like that advisor really knew how to zero in on your strengths and recommend a career path that would be the best for you. So hats off to her. I mean, was she at your college or your university?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So I went to St. Ed's in Austin, and it's the little known college. It's been here longer than UT, I'm pretty sure, because it used to be a seminary way back in like the 1700s. And so when I say I went to college in UT in Austin, people say UT, and I'm always like, no, the other one. So yeah, I mean, it's a great school, and I feel like my advisor really set me up for success with that one.
Well, this next question, Fabiana, is what I'm dying to know is your no BS approach to PR. I want to know all about it.
So I feel like I do come from this new school of PR where millennials, I mean, really are kind of taking over just naturally. We're like the next generation to grow into these leadership positions. But when I started, it was still a lot of the generation before mine. And what I had gotten from my internships and my previous jobs, or the first couple of jobs I had, was that people really did tiptoe around their clients. So it was account management, but we were all yes people. And I realized that that's not something that really, for lack of a better term, vibed with me. It wasn't something I thought was fair, not just to us as publicists, right? But to clients. We're not giving it to them straight half of the time because we're worried about saying the wrong thing and then losing out on a retainer. And so I decided very early on that I wanted to be honest, and I didn't want to BS my clients when it came to strategy, when it came to the media cycle. And I'm very upfront when I work with clients, and I tell them, like, you know, for example, I'm pitching everything I can. We're going full steam ahead, but there's also an election. There's also coronavirus. So as important as I think you are, and as important as I think your message is, we also have these other factors to consider that will probably not put you at the top of the line for media stories. And I think a lot of the time they appreciate the honesty, and it builds a much more fruitful relationship because they understand how to best work with a publicist. If we keep PR sort of secretive, if we don't educate our clients and just sort of say, I'll handle all the media stuff, don't worry about it, everything's going great, they will never really know or understand what it is that we do. And it'll make it harder for them to engage with us, right? And it's the same thing when the protests happened in June and there were these conversations about race and racial equality and what that means in the corporate world. I had to have discussions with clients where I was like, hey, I think it would be best if I didn't pitch you right now because of X, Y, or Z. Or I think that if you're going to post about this on social media, it can't be like a BS message or a black box on Instagram. You have to mean it and you have to own it. And I think that was another example of like me being very open and honest and counseling them in a way that was helpful and really just like being open. I wasn't scared to say, you know, we can't do that right now.
Well, I love that you're upfront and honest, and I'm sure that your clients appreciate that and respect you for being so upfront and honest with them.
And sometimes it's scary.
Yeah.
Especially because, you know, I'm 25, right? And I'm working with CEOs who, you know, are older or 40, 50, whatever, or more seasoned in their careers, or maybe have a different sort of trajectory in their careers. So they work a different way. And so sometimes it takes a lot out of me to just sort of say, like, I need to be honest no matter what. No matter if this person is a CEO at a Fortune 500 and they're 60 years old and they know more than me, they may know more than me in a lot of things, but probably not in PR. Otherwise, they wouldn't have hired me. So I need to step up. I need to step up as their advocate in this area.
Well, I think that, as I said, your clients appreciate you for your honesty. And evidently, you also have very frank and honest discussions with journalists. Can you tell us about those?
Yeah. So sometimes, and I think this whole like old school notion of being yes people also translates into the relationships we have with journalists. So again, when I started, there was this sort of rule of like, you do everything to get the story or to get your client the story, even if it means sort of like laying down in a way being a doormat for ex-journalists who we know is really difficult to work with, or you do whatever you need to do. I really also think that honesty is the best policy the other way around, right? Like I have to be really open and frank with journalists as well, because it's a mutually beneficial relationship. We work in tangent together. So part of being frank isn't just saying like, hey, it's okay if you don't want to work with this client. It's okay if you don't resonate with the story. I just need to know if it's a no. Because sometimes it's hard as a publicist because you follow up and you don't hear back. And so part of it is being open and saying, if it's a no, I just need to know. But I also think the frank discussions has a bit of a lighter side, and it's about really establishing those relationships. I think gone are the days of mass blind carbon copying a bunch of journalists for a press release or a story. I will email people and say, how are you doing? How is your wife, your sister, whatever I saw on Twitter, or if I've worked with them a lot, how was your Thanksgiving? The holidays have been really weird, right? Like, how are you? Sometimes the frankness is just about opening up a dialogue for them to be open with you too and to vent. Because if you're just sending pitches left and right and not really taking the time to check in, you're never going to build that relationship.
I agree, absolutely. And I think it is so important to remember their spouse's name or their children's names or things like their birthdays or whether they have a dog or a cat, and asking how they're doing. And they will remember you for that as well, and that you really cared about them as a human rather than just as somebody who's going to help you generate a result for your client.
And they're people, right? So and I also think it needs to come from a place of being genuine. I do feel like sometimes you'll send a generic pitch and it's like very obvious that the niceties that you're sort of asking aren't like super genuine. It's just to kind of like get your foot in the door and get the story, because I've done it too. But the more I progress in my career and the more I learn, the more I realize that we really need to be genuine about these conversations, especially because something I believe really wholeheartedly is that publicists are connectors of people. That is one of the basic things we do, aside from tell stories, is connect people. And if we're not building connections ourselves, how can I connect clients to the people that they also want to be connected with?
I agree with that so much, because I've taken personality tests that will show that my number one trait is as a connector. And I just love it when I'm able to connect a client with a journalist and a great story results that makes just a big difference in somebody's life or their business or their career. And so that gives me great joy and always has.
Right.
Yeah. So how do you keep track of your relationships with journalists?
With some journalists, I have built enough rapport to where we're friends on Facebook, we're friends on Twitter, like my personal Twitter or my Instagram, and we know each other really well. And sometimes they'll like Facebook message me or Instagram DM me because they need a source for a story, because that's just where we are. With a lot of others, I do keep track just with my email. Like I live and breathe and die by my email.
Me too.
And I'm sure I'm sure that's the same for every communicator. And so who am I emailing constantly? And I make a note to really check in with them and not just send them pitches, but sometimes I'll send a check-in email that's like, how was your summer? How was your vacation? How was your maternity or paternity leave? Like little things like that isn't always me just sending pitches all the time. So there's a lot of ways to connect and keep track of these relationships and sort of make a note of what people really want from you, what journalists really see, and not just journalists, influencers really want from you in terms of client work.
Absolutely. I used to have a joke. I had a name of a fake young publicist, and it was Tiffany. And I would always say, "Hi, I'm Tiffany. I just graduated with a degree in public relations. Did you get my press release?"
Right. I mean, you just have to be so eager, and the more you do it, it's easy to get burnt out. But honestly, sometimes you just have to be a Tiffany.
Well, but I think you have a better approach than a Tiffany. I think I'm going to call the better person Fabiana, because you actually treat the journalist on the other end of the phone or the other end of the email like a human, instead of just like saying, "Did you get my press release?" Because most journalists are getting hundreds, if not thousands, of press releases a day, and they're just not going to even know whether they got your press release or not. And you have to show them why they should care.
I also think that part of embracing their humanity is owning up when we make mistakes as publicists. And I really learned this more this year just because of the chaos of coronavirus and everything that was going on. But sometimes I'm so like zoned in into sending a release or sending a pitch that I maybe didn't check my decision list all the way and sent it to a journalist that writes for a very different beat, or who probably has opted out before and I missed it. And, you know, we've all gotten the really angry emails at some point in our career, email, fax, phone call, whatever, that is basically like, "Stop pitching me," or "I asked to be opted out," etc. And most publicists ignore them. I found it's better to say, like, "I'm sorry. I'm human. I didn't realize that this was being sent out to you. I'll double check my lists. I'll make sure you're removed." And just sort of kind of touching base and saying, like, "I am sorry. I made a mistake, but also I'm human just the same way you are." And I've had journalists also make mistakes on the other end. So I've been called Fabiano, I've been called Fabian, and it's okay to sort of like get on the same level.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well, we are all humans, and it is important to acknowledge our humanity. But I have to say, I'm sensitive. Like if somebody barks at me for emailing them or calling them, there's even a retired AP bureau chief from my local city here who barked at me years ago, like maybe even like 30 years ago. But I saw him recently, and all I could think is how it felt. Like I didn't like it when he was mean. It's like,
I know those interactions really do stick with me and sometimes keep me up at night. I'm not going to lie. I mean, it's hard, but also sometimes it's like it's like killing them with kindness. It's a really nice way of saying, like, "I know this was annoying, but I'm not a computer just doling out these pitches, right? I'm a human being who has a connection with my clients, and I'm sorry I BCC'd the wrong person, and like, it happens. I don't know what to tell you."
Yeah, I know. I know it does happen, and it can be painful. Well, we're going to take a quick break now, and we'll be back with more of my conversation with Fabiana shortly. First, I want to tell everybody in PR Maven Nation that my new book, Grow Your Audience, Grow Your Brand, is now out on Audible. So if you go to your Amazon account, you can go to the Grow Your Audience, Grow Your Brand page, and you can order the Audible edition of my book, which I actually read myself here at the Portland Pod, where I am recording this wonderful conversation today. So I hope you'll check that out. And if you would actually like to win a free Kindle version of the book, go to prmaven.com/giveaway, and you can enter to win a free copy. We're going to be back in just a moment with more from Fabiana.
Do you want to grow your client or customer base? Perhaps increase brand awareness? Maybe tell your unique story more effectively? Of course you do. But you may be worried that you don't have enough expertise to make that happen. Well, no worries, PR Maven Nation. Let the PR Maven herself, Nancy Marshall, show you how easy it is to get your message across effectively using a powerful yet simple tool, a message map. Nancy's training is often called informative and constructive, well-designed and impactful, with a perfect blend of theory and real-life experience. You will leverage Nancy's expertise to create your own message map when you register for this comprehensive online video training course, which is broken down into 4 easy-to-understand modules. Normally, this course is priced at $147, but for listeners of the PR Maven podcast, that's you, PR Maven Nation, it's only $29 when you enter the code word podcast during enrollment. It even includes a workbook and bonus content to guide you through the process. So go to prmaven.com and click on the Message Map Mastery course to enroll today. Remember, enter the word podcast during enrollment for a special discounted price of $29.
So, Fabiana, what is the importance of diversity marketing?
Okay, so diversity marketing, there's a lot of different definitions for it. I really think that it's important because your outreach efforts need to reflect not just your target demographic, but the society as a whole, really. I think we're beyond showing people the fantasies we want to show them in terms of marketing. People now want to see reality. And so it's important to show different abled people, people of different colors, backgrounds, like sexual orientations, etc., because that is the fantasies they want to see, right? Where they can also thrive and buy the car, wear the lipstick, etc. So I think that's why it's a crucial part that sometimes gets overlooked because we get really bogged down by maybe the client's wants in terms of what they think their target audience is or what the product is or if it's affordable or not affordable versus saying, well, why don't we just market it for everybody as a whole or for these sort of different and diverse audiences and see where we can go from there.
Well, I agree absolutely that people want to see the untarnished truth. And I think if you try to put lipstick on a pig, so to speak, and tell something that's not true, people will see right through that. So, Fabiana, what is the difference between PR and advertising, and why do you believe that PR might survive past advertising?
That's a good question. When I first started interning, I had advertising internships as well. And my very first job out of college was in an advertising agency. So this question's always really hard because I feel like if you're a publicist, you're like, I would never do advertising. I just can't stand it. And then, of course, advertisers who are like, PR would never do it, right? But I've kind of done both. And I enjoy both to different capacities. So PR is really you telling hard to digest stories or concepts or just really intricate, again, stories in a way that is digestible for a bigger audience. And it's essentially getting everybody else interested in the story and the message so they sort of disseminate it and spread the message. It's basically so-and-so told me this was great, so now I want to hear about it. Advertising is really, I think this is great. And I think you should buy it, right? I created the fantasy, I created the story, and I'm putting it in front of you. So like car commercials is the one that always comes up to me for advertising because you have like the lone Lincoln or like Mercedes or whatever in this like gorgeous European town and Matthew McConaughey's narrating and you're like, okay, you know, this is the story you're giving me. Whereas PR, you know, you could read about something in a magazine, you could see it on Instagram. And so there's multiple stories being told. I think PR is evolving and it now encompasses so many different aspects that I do think it might stand the test of time. You know, you have event planning and now it's going virtual and that's a part of PR people don't think about. You have social media management, you have newsletter and email marketing. All of that can be facets of PR. I mean, you don't know how many times I get asked, I got this press hit, what do I do with it? And then before I know it, I'm counseling them on social media best practices. Whereas sometimes advertising can be a little bit more linear. It's like, we got paid a retainer, we created this really great creative campaign. We got the billboard, we got the, you know, the 30 to 15 second ads on radio and TV. We got the advertisements on Vogue. How are all the metrics doing? We're doing well, right? So I think there's just so much that can be done, and it doesn't feel as suffocating in a way. Sorry to all the advertising people listening. It doesn't feel suffocating in a way because you have so many avenues to tell stories.
Yeah, it's funny because I think some people at first blush might think that advertising is more creative than PR, but I think PR people are some of the most creative people I know because you have to figure out, what are the routes, what are the channels to tell the story. And
Right.
especially now, we have so many more channels with social media and, videos, and as you talked about Twitter and Instagram, and we're doing a lot actually for our travel clients with Pinterest. And
Right.
I feel like Pinterest has kind of had a fresh life. It's not just about recipes and DIY projects anymore, but people use it to create kind of their bucket lists for their lives. So that's pretty cool.
Right. I mean, and that's what I was thinking is the pandemic really changed the way a lot of us, marketers as a whole, no matter what bucket you fall into, it changed the way we market. And I feel like some of the most creative campaigns I have seen, and I've seen some great commercials, like some great ads, and I've been really blown away. But I do feel like I've seen some really creative takes from publicists.
Oh, I agree. Absolutely. I think that, there's so many different ways to tell a story. And I love to see how people are doing that now. So I agree. Absolutely. And I admire you for for being so self-confident at such a young age. So my hat's off to you for all that you've done so far. So tell me, what is the importance of DE&I in PR and marketing?
Right. So it kind of ties into what I mentioned earlier, that people now want to see themselves reflected in the story. At the end, and I don't BS about it. At the end of the day, I love what I do, but what I do is sell a fantasy. It doesn't matter if I'm representing the CEO of a company, if I'm representing like a retail brand, a consumer brand, like a B2B brand or product or service. At the end of the day, we're selling different kinds of fantasies to different people. And again, people, I think, are burnt out of the idea that the fantasy or the dream has to look a certain way or be a certain way or act a certain way. And so DE&I and PR is important from the consumer standpoint because people want to see themselves in those like dreams. From an internal standpoint, I think it's also equally important. I really, again, believe that whatever you do as an agency reflects your work externally. So if there are issues of diversity within the agency, that can sort of hinder the way we counsel clients. And that might sound really controversial, but how can we expect clients to want to listen to us when it comes to DE&I if it's not reflected in us as an entity? And so I think it's really important to also look in the mirror. And this is something I tell clients all the time too, in general, not just for DE&I, but like when they have to do interviews or talk about themselves. It is very hard to look in the mirror and take a good look at yourself, but we all have to do it at some point, figuratively or literally, right? So when these issues came up, Zilker Media also had a lot of internal discussions about how we were handling diversity and how to best handle it, while I was having discussions with clients about how they could talk about this or not talk about this or what they should do. And I really do think, again, that it starts with the agency, it starts with leadership. And I work with a client who is like a DE&I consultant. She was also a publicist, and she says something that I think is really important. And it's, people are really worried about having, for example, a lot of CEOs step down because they were like, we want to make room for diversity. But sometimes the answer isn't just taking things away. Maybe it's adding more slices of the pie. So where else can you expand and add that diversity internally and sort of figure out that there so you can then properly counsel clients on the best ways to handle these sorts of crises?
Well, absolutely, because I think it's important to show diversity and equity and inclusion in all your campaigns. Because if you're, I think of our new vice president and when she actually challenged Joe Biden when they were still running for the nomination against each other. And she talked to Joe Biden about how she was a little girl who, got bused to a different school district. And that little girl was her. And to me, that was such a powerful statement. And to think about, well, actually how she has inspired and motivated so many little girls of color now that they someday could become the vice president or even the president of the United States. And I think that's just fantastic.
And it is scary. Again, it is okay to, when you have those internal conversations, to say, I don't know. I don't know what the best course of action is. And it is okay to say, well, maybe we need to look externally and hire like a DE&I consultant or see, what we can do here to really figure it out internally and give people creatives the opportunities they need to get those perspectives, right? Because in the same vein, if you want more of those diverse perspectives for clients, then we need to bring those diverse perspectives into the agency.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know that so many people got the book from the local bookstore or from Amazon, How to Be an Anti-Racist. And, they were having book club discussions and people were trying to figure it out in their head. But like you said previously, I think it's okay to say, geez, I don't really know how to be an anti-racist. And I'm not even sure I'm going to learn it from reading a book. But I think if you admit that you're interested in being an anti-racist, that's obviously the first step.
And I'm really thankful for the brands, the founders, like the agencies who maybe had a lapse in like understanding or a lapse in judgment, nothing too big, who then kind of had really genuine apology messages. I feel like the older I get, the more I'm understanding of these sorts of issues, or if people make a mistake or accidentally shoot themselves in the foot, as people might say, as long as it's nothing egregious and nothing that's like, okay, obviously that shouldn't have happened in the first place, because it really opens the conversation. And if you don't know how to act, you're going to be scared to act. So if somebody makes a mistake and they are able to learn from it, you're able to learn from their playbook. And this also, like, kind of unrelated, reminds me of like that big oil spill years ago and like that big PR disaster. It's like, it was awful. It should have never happened. But I studied that in college. I learned from that mistake.
Oh, absolutely. The Exxon Valdez. Yeah. And I think actually one of the things that we as publicists can teach clients is how to make a genuine apology.
Right.
When they always say, if you make a mistake, you need to dress up, fess up. No. When you mess up, you need to dress up and fess up. And yes. I feel like apologizing quickly can sometimes make a crisis go away before it sort of festers and grows out of proportion.
My number one rule for crisis management is do not lie. You can do whatever it is you're going to do. Obviously, I don't condone any terrible thing that becomes a PR crisis, but things happen. And if there's anything I've learned young is if you lie and people know, it will be worse, versus if you just fess up and say that you did it and have a genuine apology, we can work with that. We can really make it better.
I'm thinking of one of our famous presidents when he said, yes. I did not have sex with that woman. It's like, oh, yeah, right.
Oh, my gosh. Like, we all knew there were, even, I was very young, but now when I learned as an adult, it's like, come on, just, yeah. And if there's anything I learned about America is like, most people do not like liars. And so it's just better if you like fess up versus try to like work around it.
Exactly.
I don't know.
Exactly. So Fabiana, what is a book, an app, or a website that you have found helpful in your career and why?
Okay, a book that has been really sort of instrumental to me, believe it or not, was Kelly Cutrone's book. I know that she is a very controversial publicist. She has been known for a lot of very wild, sort of mean things that she has said. She's just like the very old school, like you get your act together or you're out. But her book, If You Have to Cry, Go Outside, was just like such an important part of my PR career, or like my lessons in PR when I started. It is a memoir. It does run through parts of her life, but it also ran through some really good tidbits of what it was like to be a publicist in the 80s. And she got into it also kind of serendipitously by accident, didn't know, got thrown into it. And this was before email. So she was like faxing people and calling people. And I learned a lot just about how to be, not just a successful marketer for the sense of being successful, but successful marketer because I care about what I do and I care about my clients and I care about their message. I also read a lot of just like the general PR magazines and like PR Couture, which is really fun. I call it like the Cosmo of PR because it has really great articles, but it's fun. I do listen to podcasts. I don't know. I feel like there's a lot that you can learn just working. And there's also a lot that you can learn by listening and digesting the words of others.
Oh, absolutely. I feel that way. And I've been doing PR a lot longer than you have. But I think that if you become a lifelong learner and you're always curious and enthusiastic too about your clients, then people will be able to feel that and appreciate it very much.
Absolutely.
So that's a great book suggestion. I haven't read Kelly Cutrone's book, but I will definitely get that one.
It's great. It's short, which I also appreciate because I'm a voracious reader, but sometimes if I'm given like a marketing book or a sales book or, like a professional development book and it's like massive, it just becomes a lot. So I enjoy when I can learn in the least amount of pages as possible.
Yeah, I agree. So, Fabiana, this has been a really great conversation, and I'm sure people from PR Maven Nation will want to get in touch. So what is the best way to follow up with you?
Yeah, so one of the best ways is through the Zilker Media website, so zilkermedia.com. We have an about page with everyone's bios and emails. So I live and die by my email, as I said earlier. So if you want to email me a question or just like pick my brain, I'm happy to reply. I'm also on LinkedIn. I believe it is Fabiana Melendez. And then the LinkedIn URL is I am Fabiana. And then my Twitter, my professional Twitter, which has a very cheeky, probably not very professional name, but again, no BS, right? Is the PR Bish. And I tweet about all things PR, some things about me, and just, industry news, ads and articles that I really like, campaigns I really like, etc. So it's another place I'm very active on.
Well, that sounds great. I'm definitely going to follow you, and I hope that you'll continue to follow me and the PR Maven podcast. And it's been really, really great getting to know you today, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you.
I do too. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you so much for such a great conversation. And I want to wish everybody in PR Maven Nation a great day today. That's it for this week's episode. I'd like to thank you for listening, and if you feel that you've gotten value out of today's conversation, consider leaving a 5-star review on iTunes or whatever app you're using to tune in. If you haven't subscribed yet, you should do so. I release a new episode each week, and subscribing will make sure you get an alert when there's a new episode. You can also join the PR Maven Nation by going to prmaven.com/nation and clicking join. It's free, and it's a great community of like-minded individuals who are all looking to learn and grow from one another. If you have an Alexa-enabled device, be sure to add the PR Maven Marketing Minute to your daily flash briefing menu. Thanks again for listening, and have a great rest of your week, PR Maven Nation.